Welcome to the Builders of Authority podcast, a show committed to helping you build authority for your brand. In the realm of business and personal branding, authority stands as a cornerstone. Authority isn't built overnight, it's built over time. So join us as we build something remarkable together. And now, here's your host, Adam McChesney.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Builders of Authority podcast. Our title sponsor for the podcast is Go High Level, also known as GHL. GHL is the first ever all-in-one platform that gives you the tools, support, and resources you need to succeed and crush your marketing goals. Personally, I have used this software since 2020. It's been a game changer for my business and our clients. If you are looking to level up your CRM and marketing game, then this is the platform to use. You can find a link for a free 30-day trial with tons of BOA and Builders of Authority bonuses in the show notes. So take advantage of the opportunity to adopt this amazing software and grow your business. Today, I'm joined by someone I got introduced to earlier this year. Funny enough, we were both at Ben Newman's St. Louis Summit event here in St. Louis and didn't meet at the event, but got connected shortly thereafter. We were a part of Ben's Coach to Coaches program. And shortly after hopping on a call together, he ended up joining our Builders of Authority Mastermind program as well. I'm impressed by how much this guest has accomplished just in the last few months of knowing him, and he's an inspiration to many. Today, he's going to bring the heat and share his story. My guest today is Mathiew Wilson. He is the founder at Alignment Real Estate in New York City. Mathiew, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, brother. Very happy to be here. I appreciate that introduction. And yeah, it was very interesting how we met. You know, sometimes you go to these events and you get to talking in these deep conversations with everyone. And unfortunately, you can't get around to everybody. But I'm very happy that we connected, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Yeah, man, this is going to be an awesome episode, and it just shows you kind of the power of being in the room with the right people at the right time, even if you don't meet those people, but you connect with them after, right? Common, event that we went to, and then we were part of Ben's program, which was awesome. So tell people a little bit about yourself, kind of where you got started just in business and life, and kind of where you're at today.
Sure. So I got started originally, I was following basketball. So from New Hampshire, started playing basketball, fell in love with it. And that was really my only opportunity in college. I wasn't good enough to play, very unathletic white kid from New Hampshire. But I had a really good friend of mine, Chris Brickley, who was on the basketball team. He said, why don't you work for the team? So I worked as a student manager. He ends up transferring to the University of Louisville. I follow him there, start working for the basketball team there. Graduated, didn't know what I was going to do. I was kind of just looking for opportunities. Rick Pitino hired me at the University of Louisville as a video guy. So I did that for a year, and it was okay. And then I got really close to an assistant coach there. He gets the head coaching job at Manhattan College. I follow him to New York. I'm in New York for 3 years. I love it. But in the back of my head, I always wanted to get into real estate. I grew up very poor, and the only successful guy that I knew was my uncle. And he was like in construction real estate. At that time, a lot of my friends at Louisville were trying to do the coaching thing, and they were ending up in these tiny towns in the Midwest or down south, making no money, very unhappy. So I said, my heart's not in this coaching thing. I want to do real estate. What better place to do it than New York City? So I jumped out of coaching, got into real estate, was a real estate agent for 5 years here in the city. I absolutely hated it, just based off of how things are set up here in New York. So a friend of mine said, why don't you come work for a developer? I think you'd be really good at that. So I switched from the broker side to working for a developer. Did that for 7 years, loved it, worked for a great guy here in the city, Hal Fettner, taught me a lot about business and kind of how to be a leader. And at the same time, I was really heavily into self-development for the last 10 years. So about 18 months ago, I got to a place where I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. I had consumed all of this knowledge. I had watched all of these YouTubes. I had read all these books, and I wasn't doing anything. And then I heard this term called success zombie. And I said, shit, that's me. I consumed all this stuff and I'm not doing anything. So I woke up one day, I called my boss and said, I'm going to quit. So I quit my six-figure job, which was crazy to me to think, because growing up, all I wanted to do was make six figures, because I thought if you make six figures, man, you made it.
Yep.
So I quickly found out you make six figures, you're actually broke, especially here in New York City. So I woke up one day, I quit. And then it's interesting when you make a decision in life, how things start to gravitate towards you. Yep. The universe starts to send you things. So fortunately, where I was working, my last building was right next to Koreatown here in New York City, heavily influenced by the Asian community. And so over the 7 years working there, I got really close to my now partner, Sunani. She's one of the top Chinese agents here in the city. When she found out that I was quitting my job, first she tried to convince me to stay. But once she felt the enthusiasm that wasn't going to happen, then she started to approach me, talk about, hey, let's open a brokerage together.
Mm.
So that's how Alignment was formed. And so Alignment is essentially aligning different cultures, different sexes, aligning buyers and sellers together. And then for me personally, alignment is anytime my life's been going very well, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, I'm making all the positive decisions. Everything's in alignment. Everything just flows much better. So that's where I'm at today. We've been open for about 14 months. We've grown the team from just the 3 or 4 of us to 21, and everything's going well.
Dude, what an incredible story, man.
Thank you.
Like so many different things to take away from that for the audience listening. I have a different story, but a lot of the same kind of methodology and thought processes that you had, right? So like I thought growing up too, like if I just get to 100K, like the world's gonna be just fine. And so like when I was living in an 800 square foot condo here in a suburb of St. Louis by myself, it was like okay. But then you start to look to buy a house, and then start a family and all this stuff, and you quickly realize like okay. It's not going to go as far as it once did. So I was trying to chasing that for a while as well, and then I kind of woke up after making $200,000 in 2019. After kind of getting into a side hustle in digital marketing in 2018, I said like, man, I got to figure out a way to like get out of this. And so I ended up doing that in 2020. But I think so many people, right, they don't make that move that you and I did. We had every reason to continue going and doing what we're doing, but we took that leap of faith and ultimately bet on ourselves. And I think like your story is fascinating just from everything. I didn't even know about the sports and the Rick Pitino stuff and all that stuff. So it's like so many different layers to that story got you to where you're at today. What has been kind of like in the entrepreneurial journey going from doing this to what you were previously doing, what's been like some of the biggest obstacles that you've had to personally overcome in that process?
For sure, it's getting over the fear of failure.
Yeah.
So, as an entrepreneur, when you have the entrepreneurial mindset, you want to try to control everything. And, it's kind of bred into us in our society that, you go to school, you follow direction, you don't take risk. And all entrepreneurship is taking risk after risk and failure after failure. So the first thing for me was getting over that being uncomfortable, being wrong or failure. And once you can get over that, things move much smoothly. But for me in the beginning, that was tough. The other thing that I love, but it's also very difficult is, when you're the leader of a company, there's no, okay, let me ask them. You got to make the decision and you got to lead. And the only way to lead is by example. And so continuing to hold myself to a higher standard every day, is an obstacle, but it also is what pushes me forward and ultimately what pushes Alignment forward.
Yeah. And so you talked about growing your team, obviously, as well, like from 3 or 4 people to 21. Like, how have you continued to like hire at a high level and bring on the right people so then that way what you've built kind of doesn't get watered down in the process, but also hold that like next standard?
It's a great question. And it's a big problem, I think, in every business, in every company.
Yeah.
And what we do here is we live by our core values, we hire by our core values, and we fire by our core values. And my belief is as long as I stay true to that, things won't get watered down because you have a great culture. You could filter out people in the beginning. And even if someone comes in and the culture is going to weed them out.
Yeah.
But if you focus on the culture, everything else takes care of itself.
I think there's a lot of things that people have always struggled with, especially in startups. Like, you want to go to like where you're comfortable, right? So maybe like friends, family. I know I've made those mistakes in the past, but then also just like you feel as if you just need bodies at time. And anytime I've just brought on someone just to be able to bring on someone to say, hey, I just need help. Usually I do a really, really poor job when I'm in that mindset of like actually onboarding them, of giving them the SOPs and the training that they need. And I'm just like throwing them to the wolves. But usually they're also taking that position for the wrong reasons too, which eventually just creates a natural disaster in your company.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. It is very especially in the startup phase when things are chaotic and we're trying to accomplish these things and we're trying to do these things and we need manpower
Mm,
point to slow down and stay true to the core values, even if it's going to take longer. I think it's better to have four people do the work of six
yeah.
and struggle through that
hmm
and bring on eight people to do the work of six just because you're trying to bring in bodies.
100%. Absolutely. So transitioning a little bit, I know you mentioned like investing a lot in self-development and you went from like that success zombie, which I love that term, to like now going back in obviously going to different events, doing the coach to coaches, like Builders of Authority. I know you're doing a lot of stuff with Ben as well. Like what did you learn from consuming all of that stuff maybe as an individual or an employee to now doing it probably at a deeper, more sophisticated level? What did you learn and what has that taught you?
So the biggest difference from, making the leap and going out and doing things and then seeking out these groups is everything sounds great theoretically.
Mhm.
And, but there's really, for me, no knowledge gained. I've learned more in the last 12 months of getting out there and doing shit than I did the last 10 years
Yeah.
of learning and reading and watching all these things.
Mhm.
That's been the biggest thing for me, just taking more action, learning that way.
Yep.
And then getting into these groups and seeking out mentorships. Someone told me a few years ago, said, look, man, it's very simple. Find someone who's doing what you want to do, that they're at a high level in that industry, and to just go learn from them. So, well, that makes a lot of sense. So then I've been doing that. And so, getting into going to these events and taking the next step, I think, in the self-development. It's great to learn from people when you go to these events, but really, I think the unspoken kind of true benefit is the people that you meet.
Yeah.
I met you, I've met a lot of great guys and great women. And the great thing about it is it's similar mindsets.
Mhm.
I've had an issue in my life, and I think a lot of self-starting, success-minded people have this same problem. And sometimes we find it difficult to identify and connect with people in our lives, because 90 something percent of society is just a 9 to 5, don't read a book after high school, just kind of floating through life. And there's no problem with that. But that's not me. That's not you. And so it's been difficult to connect. So you go to these events, and that's how everybody thinks.
Yeah.
That being said, for those reasons, it's been very, very beneficial for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think like everybody says the entrepreneurship journey, right, is lonely, and it absolutely is, but it doesn't have to be. And I think we try to seek out in others, like friends and family, what we typically actually need to get from people, like in the groups that we've joined, in the events that we've
Mm.
gone to. But sometimes we're so afraid to go make that investment in ourselves that we'll try to go have conversations. I even try to sometimes have conversations with my wife, and I understand that like she doesn't have that experience, and it's not that she doesn't care, but like it's going to overwhelm her, and which is just going to overwhelm me more when I talk about like an issue with an employee or a client or a partner or whatever it is, right? Like, hey, this has going on. But when you do it with the right people, it's actually a lot less lonely because these people are all going through the same stuff, and we have to take a step back sometimes to be like, oh yeah, we're not the only ones dealing with payroll issues and cash flow issues and hiring and firing and market, like all this stuff.
Yeah. No, that's such a great point. And you're right. The people around us, it's not that they don't care and they don't love us, but like you said, they just don't have the experience for the things that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And I really hate that term. It's lonely at the top. I don't think we're ever really at the top. If
Yeah.
you're a growth minded person, you're always leveling up. But the part that is lonely, and I went through this, and I don't know if you also went through this, once you make that decision that I'm going to better my life, I'm going to go out there and constantly grow, the people that are around you, that makes them feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You start to shed off some people. And I've had to do this multiple times in my life. That little part right there is lonely until you start to grow. And then you go to these events and you meet new people. And as you're on your journey up, you start to meet new people and it becomes less lonely. But that first part where you say, okay, I'm gonna make, you want to lose. I have a girl that works here, our operations manager. Since she's joined Alignment, she's lost 40 pounds. When you make that decision to go on a weight loss journey, you're making different decisions. Maybe you're going to the gym now. Maybe you're eating at healthier places. Well, all your friends, they don't do that anymore because they're still doing the same thing. So the beginning part can be a little bit lonely, but you start getting out there and networking with like-minded people. It doesn't have to be lonely.
Yeah. Well, and I think like the first 6 months for me were the hardest 6 months after I went full time because I was like everybody, like I never talked about how much money I made, but like people just knew that like I was in medical device sales pretty young in the company. I was doing just fine. And then they see me go off on this different path of entrepreneurship, which none of my friends were doing. And then they see me going and starting creating content and doing 75 hard and reading books and going to events. So it was like, in those first 6 months, I did get a lot of backlash, both to me and through other people saying, hey, people are saying this, and it affected me so much. But it was kind of one of those things where once I got past that hump, those things don't affect me anymore. But there is like every year, there's like a season of about 2 to 3 months where there's just so much evolution that it does force people to almost get jealous. I mean, I don't even know if jealous is the right word, but like they're like, oh, okay, Adam is doing this, or his business is doing this, or he's doing this with his family. Like, I'm just going to remove myself from the situation. And it's just one of those things that you got to go through.
Yeah, man, it's funny, but people are always jealous of the outcome, but they're never jealous of how you got there.
Yeah,
They're never jealous of all the work you've done, of all the sacrifices that you've made, of all the risks you've taken, but they'll be jealous that you can take your family here or there. And that's part of it too. And just like a good culture is going to weed out bad apples of the company, people's true feelings are going to come out, and here's how I audit my life with things like that. If you're not for my success and vice versa, I'm not for yours, but if you're not for my success and my well-being, I'll cut you out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And people that are indifferent, they're against you. So just cut them out.
Yep.
Positive energy, especially when you're trying to achieve things, is so powerful. And most of the world is negative. So do your best to cut these people out. That's really helped me. When you're trying to grow and going through, because that's hard enough. It's hard enough to be out here trying to achieve things, putting a dent in the universe. To have these negative, jealous people around you is just, it makes it impossible.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so I want to transition the conversation here because I know you explained a little bit about alignment and what that means from the company standpoint and just everything that you're doing. And I have to imagine that, I mean, obviously your company is different than every other company that's out there, but I have to imagine, based on what I very little know about real estate and New York City, is that you're probably doing something and doing it in a way of which people don't necessarily like always do real estate business, right? And so with that, it's the messaging, it's the branding, it's, all the different content you and I'm sure your company and your partners all post. How has that brand building process been to be like, hey, we're doing alignment, but we're doing it differently. And we're trying to bring this unique twist to a very competitive market in a very competitive city?
Well, it's the same thing as an individual when you try to start bettering your life. People look at you and laugh and they make comments but as long as you stay true to what you believe, and that's what we do here at Alignment, we believe in, one of our core values is over delivering. I tell the agents all the time, sales is very, very simple.
Yeah.
You'll appreciate this. And I know you've heard this before. You take one client, you over deliver, you do such a good job, they have no choice but to go tell a friend about you. And then you get a second client. That's all it is, but in order to do that, you can't think about your commission today? Like, how much money am I going to make today? And
Mm-hmm.
that's typically what you see in the real estate industry.
Yep.
Talks about commission and selling this house, da, 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 da. Here, we're just trying to take care of the client as best we can, over deliver. And, another thing that sets us apart is I'm a self-development company, self-development people company. We just happen to service real estate.
Love
It is
that.
my firm belief that you will always fall to the level of your self-development. So that's what we focus on here all the time. Twice a month, I take the whole team, the whole company, we go do a workout class, either boxing or running. And as I mentioned, our operations manager, Rosie, she's lost 40 pounds since she's been here. And now that isn't just the exercise that we're doing. That is the mindset. That's the culture of alignment, constantly growing. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how it's hard to grow and the people that get jealous. Well, imagine being at a place where everyone's trying to grow and she's happy that you're winning and you're happy that she's winning. Now that's a place that can foster significant success in any industry. We just happen to be in real estate.
Yeah. Well, and so what I tell people all the time is, because people are like, Adam, like, how do you own an auto glass company? How do you now own a Christmas light installation? Like, you're a digital marketer, right? And I tell people, like, digital marketer was the vehicle that I literally found online to go start a side hustle and become an entrepreneur full time. Like, I spent 5 years in medical device sales. At this point, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, I just have this different vehicle to be able to go do this stuff. But my story of the auto glass company, like, I tried to sell off the website of the digital real estate that we built to every other competitor in town, and even SafeLight. And they all laughed at me, said, you can't start this company. There's no value in this. And now all of them, the owners that are local, they're like, man, I wish I would have just taken you up on buying that website, because you were asking for pennies on the dollars, what you've created to a now $1 million business. And everybody talks about you guys and talks less about us. I wasn't an auto glass person. My uncle, who's now in the company with me, is not an auto. Like, we innovated in an industry that was outdated, that needed something fresh, that was built on marketing and advertising, no differently than you're talking about. Hey, we're a self-development company that does things differently. And that's really the future, I think, of business. I think in every which regard is it's no longer about how good you are at the activity. It's about everything that builds up to the activity.
Yeah, I could not agree with that more, because technically we can all learn whatever we want. You can go on YouTube and get a PhD in installing glass windows. You could get a PhD in real estate. What it comes down to is how you treat people.
Yeah.
People want to do business with their friends. If you're treating people the right way and you're constantly growing yourself, people want to be a part of that. And people want to do business with those types of companies. And it's so funny, the story you're telling, because that's always how it is. People always laugh at you in the beginning, and they always ridicule you in the beginning, and they always, pick apart what you're doing. And then you start to get some traction. All of a sudden, they say, oh, wait, Adam, let me get involved with this. Can I have a job? Or I wish I would have taken you up on that website offer. So very interesting, the evolution of growth.
Yeah, it always ends up panning out that way. Well, Mathiew, this has been awesome. Last question, and before we kind of finish everything up and find out, where everybody can stay in touch with you, is we always want to know, kind of like, obviously you talked a lot about your journey, what you're doing right now, but what are you most excited about with some of the things, at least the ones that you can share, of what you're doing in the future, whether it's personal, business, combination of all that stuff? Like, where are you headed with a lot of this stuff, and what are you most excited about?
That's a great question. I would say I'm most excited about, and this is the whole reason selfishly that I started Alignment. I'm most excited about the success stories that we have going on here at Alignment. I've mentioned 3 times now my girl Rosie, who's lost 40 pounds since being here. I have a new agent, Yoko, who just closed a $1.65 million condo a few months ago. I have a new agent that started 3 weeks ago, and she's closed 5 deals. Like, that to me, it brings true fulfillment. Yeah. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm very excited to see the growth of Alignment. And as I know that as we grow the company as we grow this into $100 million brokerage, those stories will start to compound, instead of just a handful of them, we'll have hundreds of them. and it'll trickle down. And that's my whole goal. Just grow alignment to as large as possible, and it positively affect as many people's lives as possible, not only with our clients, but more specifically here at Alignment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love kind of the way in which this podcast went, which it's like people, culture, all the things that we tend to like sometimes always forget about. Not forget about, but we sometimes downplay the importance of those things, and we try to focus on like the exposure, try to focus on like being the best at the thing. But in all reality, so much of business is business regardless of the industry, and it really comes down to a lot of those things that we discussed today. So, man, this was an absolutely incredible episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to come chat with me. Where can people stay connected with you, learn more about you on social media, the business, etc.? And we'll put all that stuff in the show notes.
Sure. Check out Alignment on Instagram, Alignment NY. And you can also check me out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and it's Mathiew Wilson, Mathiew. I know that's a weird way of spelling it. I've been getting that since kindergarten. Thank you, Mom, for that. But it's Mathiew Wilson, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
Love it, man. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate you, and this was an incredible episode.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you for the time.
And thanks again to our amazing title sponsor, Go High Level. Without them, we aren't able to produce the quality of content or have amazing guests on like we did today. Check them out for a free and extended 30-day trial in the show notes. We've been using it since 2020. It's been a game changer for us and our clients. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review as well. We're making a big push for reviews this year, and it definitely helps move the needle. Authority isn't built overnight. It's built over time.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. We sure do appreciate it. Until next time, friends.